Okay, this is video number 3. We are reading from chapter 16 of The Rape of the Mind by Mind.wmv. Discipline and brainwashing. When we want to train a soldier to resist brainwashing, we have to give him antidotes against mass suggestion. We have to teach him to make up his own answers and to criticize his teachers. We must train him in negative suggestibility and emphasize the courage to reject emotionally pleasant reasoning when it does not seem truthful. Above all, we have to repeat such lessons many times to make a self-confident individual out of a recruit. Against a daily barrage of suggestions, we have to provoke individual criticism. All this has to be done in addition to making the soldier familiar with the concept and implications of brainwashing. In so doing, he will learn unconsciously to judge what propaganda is or what it is not, as we all partially do when listening to advertising over the radio. Psychological experience tells us that part of propagandistic suggestions can leak through even alert mental defenses and penetrate our opinions. Anti-brainwashing training has to be done thoroughly and repeatedly. It may appear to be in conflict with rigid discipline. When the teacher and officer knows enough about the subject, however, the student's self-respect is enhanced through identification with the leading officer. True, we see here a change of disciplinary relations, but it offers the real test of discipline in a free, democratic community. A man who has been taught self-esteem and knowledge will stand to the end when the hour of challenge comes. The change of the war of weapons into a mental Cold War requires a challenge of discipline. The soldier has to know not only his rifle, but even more the sense of his mission and the nonsense of the enemy, the quality of the group, and the influences of the leader. In every group situation, morale refers to the degree of cohesive strength of the members and to the amount of loyalty toward the group and its goals. Morale may or may not imply an understanding of the goals. In Western culture, with its subtle pros and cons, a much deeper need for awareness, understanding, and consideration of goals is implied than is called for in a totalitarian state. In the totalitarian state, with its veneration for the strong leader, the threatening loss of coherence when the dictator or leading group fails would have a much more disintegrating effect than such failure in a democratic society, whose members usually have reached a higher degree of self-determination and governmental skill. A democracy always finds new leaders ready to take responsibility. Morale includes the question of how much people can endure, physically and mentally, and for how long. Under different kinds of regimentation, the limit of endurance will be different. Standby morale, based on fear as in prisons, may disintegrate at the least sign of weakness in leader or guard, or when the individuals have not as yet been sufficiently disciplined. The kamikazes, the pilots educated for suicide, were thoroughly indoctrinated with the self-offering ideology, and their morale, as shown in the war with Japan, might be said to have been high in an Oriental sense. Here, discipline and allegiance had become so automatic that life was of no importance either to the individual or to the group. The only thought was to keep going and beat the enemy. This kind of morale is often dependent on obtaining a frenzied desperation, a kind of collective suicidal rage in pursuit of the national goal. We are becoming more and more aware of how important leadership is in boosting morale. The leader is the embodiment of the valued human relationships for which we are willing to offer our energy and, even when needed, our lives. Through identification with him, we borrow his fortitude. It is not always the official leader who has charge of lifting the morale. Sometimes a sergeant or a soldier may take over this function. The official leader himself is in a more difficult position. He must be many things that may seem to contradict one another. He must represent paternal authority as well as our ego, our conscience, and our ideals. He must relieve us of our sense of guilt and anxiety. and he must be able to absorb our needs for strength, affection, and dedication, our transference needs as expressed in psychological terms. He must be able to create group action and motivation at the same time, increase the individual's self-esteem. His doubts may become our doubts. His loss of confidence makes us lose our self-confidence. At times we may wait or may want him to be a tyrant so that we can be relieved of our personal resentments and responsibilities. Sometimes we want to compete with him, as we competed with our fathers. At other times, we want affection from him. The leader must be both a scapegoat and a giant. Our own inner strength will grow, depending on the leader's inspiring and guiding personality. While we may never love him completely, we will use him to grow or decline in our morale. Yet the individual not only borrows strength from the group and its leaders, and its leader, he also brings his own spirit to it. Even when he is used as a scapegoat to release group hostility, the individual, when he takes it with humor and philosophy, may unwittingly boost the morale of the group. He communicates, as it were, his personal tolerance to others. The black sheep in a platoon is often as much accepted as the beloved sports hero. In the same way, the group communicates all kinds of feelings to the individual. The process of morale contagion is continually going on. Its quality depends on mutual acceptance, friendships, the amount of contagious fear in the group, and the quality of interpersonal processes, the resistance-provoking qualities in the few, and so on. Let us not forget that the best morale booster for ourselves is to help to lift the morale of others. When interhuman contact is not allowed, morale is soon lacking. For instance, we heard from several escaped people from behind the Iron Curtain that their most prominent complaint in the totalitarian system was the feeling of mental isolation. The individual feels alone and continually on the alert. There is only mutual suspicion. The new gospel for those escapees was the ready humane acceptance and contact they experienced in the democratic group, because here was spontaneous enthusiasm and mutual acceptance, even when there was disagreement. And I'll stop it right there because there isn't really much to read, and so I just rather divide up that. So we'll stop it right there a little early, and we'll pick up in the next video. This was video 3. I'll see you in video 4 of chapter 16.